Hi, this is James from Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today we're going to look at the prototype Obscure War by Weiss Games. This is a 2 to 4 player game that takes about 90 minutes to play. So let's go ahead down the table here. I'll give you a general idea how the game flows, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so this is what a 2-player setup of Obscure War might look like. Now, a couple things to keep in mind is this is a prototype of the game. This is a prototype for the Kickstarter of Obscure War. So all the components and even the rules are subject to change. So keep in mind that these are all prototype components. Now, in the game of Obscure War, what you're first going to do is it's going to be a 2-player game. There are additional rules in the back, or advanced rules for like a 4-player game and so on, but I'm just going to show you the 2-player. You're going to pick one of your compulsions. You're either going to be vampires, which are over here, or you're going to be werewolves. You're going to be one of the two. Now, you're going to get 4 characters to play with, and they're going to be from Master, Avatar, Elite to Henchman. And you want to put these in order because these are actually the turn order for them. First is going to go the Master, then the Avatar, then the Elite, and then the Henchman of each side. So that means that when the that's Henchman, sorry. When these Masters get to go, whoever's going to be the starting player is going to go first, and then the other player will go, and then in the next round it'll switch off. So the player plays the Master, then the other player plays the Master, then they go into the Avatar, they move them, then they go into the Elites, and then finally they go into the Henchmen. Now at the start of the game, once each player has picked their cabal, they're going to place their little units out on the board, and the starting player is going to put them anywhere they want, and then the other player is going to put one anywhere they want, with some exceptions. You can't put them into these little boxed off areas. You can't put them adjacent to an enemy to start, and that's it. So you're going to set up all your characters out on the board. Now, these are going to be, these little squares here are going to be your obscure planes, and these are going to be what you're going to fight over for the game. And there's only 2 ways of getting points in the game. One way is you do any amount of damage to an opponent. So when you do any amount of damage, you get 1 point. Doesn't matter if you do 10 or 1, you get 1 point. If you control one of these obscure planes, you get a point at the end of every turn. At the end of all your turns, sorry. At the end of 3 rounds, the person with the most points wins. So like I said, on a normal round, each player is going to get to activate each of these characters. If a character dies, which all characters start with 10 points, you can use this 10-sided die to mark that, they're removed from the game. So if it would happen that your Master dies and it's time for the Master to make their movement, you skip it. The other opponent gets to do theirs, but you don't get to do yours. So on each turn, so let's say I'm going to fire off my Master here. On each turn, you get to do 4 different actions. You get to do a card action, which I should explain at the beginning. If each turn you get to have 4 cards here. Okay, so you bang each one, you have 4 cards, and you can play these cards. And mostly these cards are going to be like sort of like their own little portal. So when I place them down, they can't go over top of a Nexus portal, and they can't go over top of another card, but they can go over up to 6 characters. So if I put this one here and there's 2 characters here, for the time being, this counts as 1 spot until the end of the round. They have different effects that occur in these things, and the other thing you have to look out for is the number up on the top. When you're casting this, whoever's turn it is, you're going to take a look at their number, and if the number on the spell that I cast is higher than that player's number, they will suffer that much damage, the difference. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So you can play a card. So we can put these nexuses out there or do different things to the players in there. And when a player moves into the space, it's considered tumbled in, or if you place it over characters, they're considered to tumble into that card or the little nexus there. The other thing is you can do your movement action. You can perform a horizontal or vertical movement. And so that means you can move these ways throughout the game. And one cool thing about movement is like, wow, how many spaces can you move? You can move as much as you want in one direction. So horizontal vertically, you can move, I can move all the way across the board like this or whatnot. So think about chess pieces or whatever. So I can move all the way over here, control those, gain a point, mark it down, and move on. The other player can do the same and try to attack or try to take control from that portal from me. The other thing is you can do attack action. There's two different types. There's going to be shooting action and there's going to be melee action. So we'll go over attack in a second. The last one's control action, and that's when you can control one of the free obscure plane domains, and that's these little squares. And that'll give you your points during the game. So the two different types of attack. Now, it's one thing to mention that some of these cards actually do interrupt, so you do have to look out for that in the game so that your opponent can't interrupt your action. But in general, what's going to happen is if I move here and I can do a shooting action, and that is denoted on the character by having this little target on here. If the opponent is unobscured horizontally or vertically from that character, you can shoot them. If it's a melee action, they have to be adjacent or in the same little nexus thingy to do the damage to each other. Now, when you're going to attack, you're going to take these 3 dice that you have and you're going to roll them. And what you're looking for is if you're looking for the highest value. So in this roll, I would have the 6 in there. So the 6 would be my highest value. That would be my attack value. There are different things going on. You can also have 2 of the same value. So 2 identical results. So if I had 2 1s on here, I would then take the identical results, and so I'd have 2 power when I attacked. The other things you can do is if you have a sequence, so if I have like 2, 3, and 4, then I get the total of all 3 of the dice in my combat. If I have a set of all 3 matching numbers, then I take that total, and that's my power. So your opponent's going to do the same thing, and you're going to resolve the attack. Now, a couple of things that I want to mention real before we go into resolving the attack. You also get to do a reroll, and that is based on the class of the character, which is going to show up here. That's your class. So if it's a class 1 character, you get to reroll one of your 6-sided dice once. If you have a class 2, you can reroll a 1d6 twice. If you have a class 3, you can roll the 1d6s 3 times. So you can, the more powerful you are, the more chance you have of getting those sequences or set of the 3 identical numbers to do your attack. Okay, outside of special moves, the way it's going to work is if the attacker number is better than the defender's number, the defender suffers 1 wound. If they're the same, the defender suffers 1 wound. If the attacker's number is less than the defender, nothing happens. Now, keep in mind that there are special abilities that can add wounds to this, but that is generally how it's going to work. And once you wounded an opponent for that turn, you also get a point. So make sure to keep track of those. The prototype came with a 20-sided die to do that, but you can also use like a piece of paper to write down what your score is going to be on there. Like I said, you're going to take turns moving each of the characters. So you're going, once all 4 characters have been moved for each opponent, each player, then the new round begins. After the end of the 3rd round, the player with the most points wins. Now, I did want to throw out one thing here real quick because I did forget about it, but it's very, very cool in the game, is each player has a special ability right here. This is going to be an ongoing ability that happens all the time. But they also have an ability that they can activate, and they're all different. So this one here, Obscure Fortress, the character can suffer 5 wounds and cannot suffer any more wounds during this turn. So you're going to damage your own character to prevent your opponent from being able to get a point. Once you do that, you flip them over, showing that they've used their ability, because they can only use their ability once per round. And each character has, well, the one with the little symbol on here, the ongoing one is just ongoing. So they all have really cool abilities, and they all have a ability they can fire once per round. Really cool in how unique each of the characters are in the game, and you have to keep aware of the abilities. Now there's only going to be 4 characters on each side, so it's pretty easy to remember what each of them do. The miniatures, now again these are prototypes, are really nice, and they will easily be able to tell on the battlefield which miniature belongs to which character. Movement simplified in the game. Like I said, you can move any distance horizontally or vertically. But let's go ahead back up the table here, and I'll give you my final thoughts on Obscure War. Okay, so Obscure Wars. I really like this game. It's really, really good at 2 players. Now again, this is a prototype game, so what I play through, the rules and such, are a prototype. So they're subject to change, so things can change throughout. But in general, I think it's a great 2-player game. Playing each of the different cabals on there and all their asymmetric powers and just simplified movement in this game is also amazing. I like the fact that you can move any distance you want, horizontally or vertically. You know which order the characters are going to trigger in. You know the locations of all the portals on the board where you can gain points. You can decide whether you want to gain the points through controlling those portals or just doing like pot shots on the opponent. The ranged attacks are super powerful, so you have to keep those in mind, and those characters, you may want to knock them out of the game or just pin them down or do different things to stop them. There's also really cool little nexuses that you can play out, and I like the interrupt cards in there, and it is very dynamic and fun experience and fast. So I'm really looking forward to the Kickstarter for this. This is going to be a customizable game in the advanced rules that can show you where you can build your own decks and do different things. So there's going to be other cabals and factions and characters and stuff that you're going to be using. In the prototype, like I said, there was just enough to play the 2-player game, which is cool. So I would highly recommend that, just seeing the general rules on there, and if you're looking for a 2-player, nice miniature style combat game, this is a game you're going to want to check out when it comes out on Kickstarter. So that's my thoughts. Thank you for watching.